Welcome to this awesome panel. We have some great speakers here today. So I'm just going to introduce them quickly. We have Sarah Ellis, who's the Director of Digital Development from the Royal Shakespeare Company in the UK. Rowie Ahmed, who's the Head of Digital from the Grand Palais. Etienne Tellier, who is the CEO of Iconem, which is a company that has worked with many different museums, including the Institut du Monde Arabe and the Cité d'Architecture. And then we have Lawrence Childs, who's the Head of Digital Services from the National Gallery from the UK. And Chloe Jari, who's a producer from Lucid Realities. They've done a lot of work with the Musée d'Orsay and the Musée de l'Orangerie. Just wanted to make sure I got all of that right. So just before we start, I'm going to do a little quick temperature check of the room. How many people in this room are content producers? Okay. How many of you have worked with museums or cultural institutions before? Oh, how many of you would like to? Okay, awesome. Okay, great. So with that, we'll start off with Rowie from the Grand Palais. He's just going to do everyone's going to do a quick introduction about where they're from, what they do, and projects they're working on.
It's me that speaks first.
Oh, wait, no, sorry. It's Sarah first. There you go, Sarah.
Thank you very much. I'm Sarah from the Royal Shakespeare Company, and I don't have any slides. I'm just going to say hello and talk and share our work. So I'm here. I don't work for a museum, but I do work for a cultural institution. And my role at the Royal Shakespeare Company is to look at the past, the present, and the future, and to enable the artists, the theatre practitioners that we work with these new technologies that are coming in, such as augmented reality, virtual reality, mixed reality, to expand a theatre-making toolkit. So my remit is to look at how we use those technologies on our stages, but also how we use those technologies to expand the storytelling platforms and experiences you can have in our building, and also how can you have an RSC experience in your home, or if you're not able to get to Stratford in the UK, how can we extend that experience for you? I've been working there for probably the past 8-9 years, and in that time I've always worked in collaboration. One of the important things when you're bringing something new into a space is that you have to work with people that aren't like the people that are currently there, and that's where some brilliant alchemy can happen. One of the sort of more notable projects and partnerships that we're doing at the moment is with Magic Leap, who are a mixed reality company working in the world of spatial computing. We've had a relationship with them over the past few years and have developed a series of prototypes, but also more fundamentally actually, and something I think we're both really proud of, is a series of fellowships where we've given 6 people an opportunity to learn how to make theatre and use these new technologies at the same time. Because when we're looking at embedding an augmented reality experience in a building or a space where there are rituals and there are ways that people are already experiencing that space, we have to somehow integrate them within that and make sense of that and look at the language around that and look at how we are architecting those experiences that don't disrupt and confuse audiences, but actually come into that space and make more meaning and also justify themselves. If you have a space that is fundamentally beautiful and wonderful and magical, if you're augmenting that, what is the augmentation doing? And I think one of the challenges that we have in this space is when the internet started, we put pictures on the walls of the internet and it looked lovely. And in the immersive space that we're going into now, we've got to think about how we can creatively dial up the real world and the digital world together.
Thank you. So, Rowie, go ahead.
Thanks. So, a few words. The RMN Grand Palais is a public cultural institution giving services and operation on the B2B, B2C level to different type of cultural museum institution. We're also operating, among others, the Grand Palais Galerie Nationale. What I would like to share with you today is our new type of exhibition. This is the title of our session, which we might call them digital immersive exhibition, location-based. So I would like to share with you 3 insights with 3 it's yeah, 3 insight and 3 example. So the first insight is it's about new format of exhibition. 2 years ago, we did Site Éternel about the archaeological sites in Syria and Iraq that was destroyed. We produced it with Iconem, here present, and with the Louvre. And it's a new type of format where we projecting 360 degrees all around images which are in motion. It's not cinema. It's not exhibition, it's not VR, but it's also cinema, exhibition, VR. It's really a new format, and I think it's important to acknowledge it. And it will be developing the next years to come in a tremendous way. You can see it also in other places, for example, the Atelier des Lumières and other type Team Lab, I don't know if you saw it, but this is a new type of format. First insight. Second insight, it's a new audience experience. Actually, we are creating a new behavior of audience. I might even say it's being an audience here, which is evolving. The public is not behaving the same way as we in cinema, in a VR, or in exhibition. We have other type of audience in this type of format. This example from last April, I think 2 months ago, we showed a huge immersive artistic installation by Wim Wenders at the Grand Palais. And what was amazing, it was to see how the creation of a new type of public, because the public either walk around, danced, kissed, sit down, watch it. It was really, the public was inside the work. And I think it's the second very interesting insight that also will be developing in the upcoming years. And the third one, yep, it's the new design of attention. Because what we are today really needed to explore and to experience is how we create, build, and engage in this new type of format audience, the attention. And in order to do so, I invite you next spring to our new immersive exhibition that will take place at the Grand Palais. And again, it will be a landmark, I think, in this type of format, because we will present at the Salon d'Honneur de Grand Palais, which is quite a huge gallery, Pompeii, the splendor and tragedy of, and then the archaeological stakes for the last 2,000 years. So the public will be invited to discover and to pay attention, and at the same time to have strong sensation, but also quite a lot of information. And so to finish, for the first time, it's a world premiere now. I'm dedicated to Michael, which is not in the room, which organized this festival, because I will show the first ever trailer of this show for next spring.
Thank you. So now, that's amazing. Next, we have Lawrence from the National Gallery.
Thank you very much. We've got some slides. So yeah, I'm Lawrence Charles, Head of Digital Services at the National Gallery. A little bit about what I do. So I have a team that team of 12 at the National Gallery. It's been built up over the last sort of 18 months from a base where the National Gallery didn't have a digital team or hadn't had one for quite a number of years. And that team is sort of centred around three core principles: data and insight, digitising the visitor journey, and immersive experiences. And so we've been sort of starting to play with immersive experiences. I put that initial first slide up. Go back one if you wouldn't mind, just in case you haven't been to the National Gallery. There it is. At the heart of London, on Trafalgar Square. And if you didn't know, we've got a relatively small collection. It's only 2,300 paintings, but we tell the story of the European art, masterpiece by masterpiece, with our slogan. But we have these beautiful spaces as well, and I think one of the challenges that we're finding as we move into doing more immersive and working with our curatorial teams and our paintings is kind of the connection between those beautiful spaces and the artworks and how we can intervene in those. The collection is very much seen as part of the gallery, and the gallery is seen as part of the collection. So bringing technology in has always been a struggle. But in terms of VR and AR and immersive, we've been experimenting in the last 18 months or so. One of the major projects we had a lot of success with was in collaboration with Facebook, with something called Sunflowers Live, which brought 5 of Van Gogh sunflowers together for the first time in a series of Facebook relays, but it also had a quite simple VR experience connected with that. But what it told us and what it taught us was the reach that could have, in that it had over 4 million people use it across all the different types of media, but also the VR experience itself had 8 million people, actually 8 million visits to the VR, which was a really big learning curve for us in terms of that reach and connectivity over something that was actually quite simple in delivery, but quite complex in actually putting together in terms of connecting other galleries together. So as we sort of embark on this and start to do more, one of our next projects is got a working title of Virtual Veronese. And this is another kind of approach for us because it's a very different take. It's a partnership collaboration with a group called Story Futures, which is a funded body in the UK that has received funding to stimulate the economy around virtual in certain areas across the country. We're working with the group to the west of London, and we've got a pot of money, they've got a pot of money, and we've come together around a research project that was already in effect with one of our curators, looking at this rather marvellous Veronese painting called The Consecration of St. Nicholas. And where it used to be, which was in San Benedetto al Po in Italy, near Mantua. And this idea of taking, the visitor on a journey from the gallery and how it exists and the painting as it exists in the space, and connecting that with the rich story around where that painting was created for, how it was created, and the power that it was trying to evoke in the visitor in the 16th century. And that connection between the experience and the power of devotion, quite a complex thing to do, with the more contemporary idea of, well, why is the painting in the National Gallery and where did it come from? And we have a lot of altarpieces, and so therefore there's a rich idea that we could do a lot more of these type of experiences, connecting the visitor with the painting where it used to be. As I say, the main thing about the whole project really was how we partnered with Story Futures and did something in a very different way, that we commissioned. Ran it over a 2-day sprint where we had 5 agencies come in. We gave them a bunch of assets that we had created. We scanned the church, and we put them in a room for 5 days and made them pitch. And that was a really rich experience for us, for the gallery, to sort of operate in that way, to have people come in, kind of like Sarah was saying, and kind of open ourselves up to different ideas, but also for the startups themselves to kind of come and have that access to our curators, to our research team, and a real sort of rich collaboration. Story Futures is based out of Royal Holloway University in London. And again, they're bringing a lot of kind of research element to this project as well. So we can really explore how to do storytelling with our content and how to create rich immersive environments, but also how we insert them into the gallery, because it's actually quite complex. So in terms of being able to show you stuff, it's not quite live yet. The next part of this is that we'll be doing a 2-week trial in July. So all I can really show you is kind of one shot of people wearing a particular type of technology in the gallery, and what we're learning really quickly and really rapidly is kind of the limits of the technology that we've chosen, and we've chosen that for various reasons in terms of it being quick and light. But to get that kind of rich experience, we're now porting that into 2 different types of headsets and running these as very live trials in the gallery in July, with the intention of then running it as a proper experience in January, February next year. And all the learning we'll get from that in terms of how to run these types of experiences, what's needed to support them, is something that we're rapidly moving into. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. We then also have 2 other areas of more immersive projects that will come later in the year. And another angle we're taking is that we're also kickstarting an innovation lab at the gallery. And that's something that we're really keen to see how the gallery can be a stimulus for more of that R&D type of approach.
That sounds amazing. We will now have Etienne.
Mm-hmm. So my name is Etienne Tellier. I am the COO of Econam. Econam is a technological startup that uses new technologies to preserve World Heritage sites. We work in many different countries, and our purpose is really to preserve the memory of sites. Because as you know, today's sites are more threatened than ever because of a series of dangers, conflicts, climate change, urban growth, and the whole purpose of our company is to preserve these sites by creating digital replicas in 3D of these sites. So we work for a number of partners, including UNESCO, the World Bank, the United Nations. And to give you a little background on what we do, we have a protocol that involves drones. So we fly drones that go on the field that take thousands of pictures of a site, and then we process all this data using powerful computers, and we turn this data into very precise 3D models that can be precise till the millimeter or even lower than that. So they are very useful for scientists to study the sites and prepare restorations. So we work in 30 countries today. We have scanned over 150 sites with a network of local partners. And our primary activity is a scientific activity. We work for scientists, archaeologists, but over the years we developed another activity, which is a cultural proposal for museums. And what we do is we use the 3D scans that we did in the field to propose immersive experiences. So we produced the content of several exhibitions over the last 3 years, including Site Éternel, Eternal Sites, that Roy mentioned earlier. This exhibition traveled to Morocco recently. We also produced content for an exhibition on Le Crac des Chevaliers, which was held in La Cité de l'Architecture last year. And more recently, we produced the contents of the exhibition Cité Millénaire, Age-Old Cities, that was presented in l'Institut du Monde Arabe, the Arab World Institute. And so it was similarly to the exhibition Cité Éternelle. The whole idea was to raise awareness of the audience on heritage at risk. So this exhibition presented 4 heritage sites in the Middle East, including Aleppo, Mosul, Leptis Magna, and Palmyra, sorry. And so it was an immersive exhibition in the sense that we had large-scale projections of computer-generated videos created from our 3D scans, and the visitor was totally immersed in the sites. So when he entered the museum, he would visit and go through a series of very big rooms where he was surrounded by this immersive experience. And this exhibition drew over 120,000 visitors to l'Institut du Monde Arabe. So it was a success in terms of audience. And another example is an exhibition we did on Le Mont Saint-Michel in partnership with, so this exhibition was presented in Le Musée des Plans Reliefs in Paris. It is a museum that has dozens of physical replicas of cities and sites of France. And this exhibition, actually, it was an augmented reality experience co-produced by Microsoft. And it was used with HoloLens helmets. So the visitor could see both the physical replica of Le Mont Saint-Michel and holograms explaining a series of information about the evolution of Le Mont Saint-Michel. And again, this exhibition was quite a success in terms of frequentation because attendance of Le Musée des Plans Reliefs grew by 80% from one year to the other. So one of the insights I would like to develop is how immersive exhibitions actually are emotional experiences. It creates a new kind of experience and relationship with the works of art. And the second insight I would like to develop later on is how these immersive exhibitions can play with the artifacts. One of the concerns raised by immersive exhibitions is that since they are digital, they may replace, objects and artifacts. And what we saw over the last exhibitions is that actually it's not that. We can propose exhibitions where the artifacts and the movies interact. So.
Nice. Thank you. All right. Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. Okay, Chloe?
Hello, I'm Chloe Jarry from Lucid Realities. So we are a VR, XR content production company based in Paris, and we are focused on experience, VR experience or immersive experience we can live in museum mostly. So I have been working with museum for more than 20 and so years, so quite a long time ago. And before in publishing and now in VR content, so that can be a link. And our first VR project in museum was The Enemy. So this was a multi... It doesn't work? Yeah, it works. So The Enemy was a multi-user experience, and we called it an exhibition that was presented for the first time at the Institut du Monde Arabe. So the idea of this experience was to narrative. No, maybe just yeah. Thank you. A narrative to bring you in a meeting with combatants from different countries in the world, and all the users, we have 20 users at the same time, were having a collective experience in the way they are watching them. They can see them in the VR, but at the same time an individual experience as you know that VR is an individual screen, and so all the participants had different walkthrough and different content, or the same content but said in a different way. And the reason why we wanted to set up this installation in museum is because for us, museums are also a place where we can gather people around a subject and about a subject. So that was the subject of war or peace or humanity, and to be able to organize a debate between the participants. So that was exactly the idea of The Enemy, to have an experience alone, but lived collectively, and at the same time to have a different experience. So when they take off the headset, the first question they ask with, I don't know, your husband, what happened for you? And what have you seen? Who have you met? and so and so. And that was very really the reason why we did it like that. So the enemy, yeah. So you have some data. We showed it at the Arabic World Institute in 2017, and then in Israel in Boston at the MIT Museum end of 2017. And then in Canada and in Switzerland, and it will be in Germany next year. So that was also a new job for us in a way to be able to tour this exhibition. We are VR content producer, and now we are VR content or VR installation tourneur. I don't know the word in English, but I guess it's distributor. And that's a completely new word for us. So after that, the other experience I can speak about is Claude Monet. So Claude Monet was a different partnership because we co-produced it with Musée d'Orsay and Musée de l'Orangerie. That is the same institution, and two marvelous museums in Paris. So Musée d'Orsay and Musée de l'Orangerie were co-producer of this project. So that was a shorter experience, only 8 minutes. Maybe you can show the small video. Yeah. Yeah, I just let my voice. So I guess everybody, or maybe not everybody, but a lot of people know this work by Claude Monet, that are these big panels at the Orangerie Museum. And these panels are, of course, specific because they are the last work of Claude Monet, but at the same time, they are stuck on the walls at the Musée de l'Orangerie. So the first idea of this experience was to be able to have this artwork traveling, but also, and that was really what we wanted to do with the museum, to have a different view on this work, like an immersion in the painting and a way to tell the obsession of Monet about sorry. So it's just the end. And also the obsession of Claude Monet about the reflection of the light on the water, and the fact he spent maybe 30 years of his life in front of his pond in Giverny. So in the experience, you are traveling from the Giverny garden to his studio and see all his work and during all these years on the water lilies. So this project was presented during 4 months in the Orangerie Museum, in the main gallery, not in the middle of the water lilies as we show it in the trailer, but in the main gallery downstairs, near the Renoir and the Matisse, and so it was quite successful, but only 3 parts, so not so much, and now it's traveling around the world.
So those are 5 incredible projects. I feel like I could talk to each of you for at least an hour about each one in particular, but I really wanted to highlight what they were. But let's just get to real talk right away because we have limited time. I want to ask you guys about pain points and what are the difficulties with getting these projects off the ground. How do you fund them? What are the logistics? What are the difficulties dealing with hardware and setup? See everybody laughing because yeah, I think we all kind of feel you. So who wants to start?
I think our pain point really is kind of there's many different directions a lot of this can go, and I think our pain point is really landing on what type of experience does the National Gallery want to do in VR or AR, and I think that becomes quite a
sort of angsty question for everybody, because the National Gallery has a particular, its reason for being is to take care of the paintings, the kind of the knowledge it has. And I think when you start to do things that maybe play with the painting or play with the what do you mean by immersive experience, it becomes a bit of a debate. And that's really that kickoff point of where does the idea come from, and who owns that idea becomes the hardest part.
To sort of pivot the opposite of that, the least pain points are when you've got an artistic idea aligned, and that you can communicate that to a partner or a studio or a set of artists that can then work with that. Where it becomes really problematic is if someone goes, I want to create a piece in VR, and you're like, why? And I think that you really have to think about the motivation for it, and that also is that what how does that make the experience for your audience? If they're coming to see you, how are you making that transformative for them, and how do you create it amongst the ecology of the experiences that you're creating for those audiences? But big pain points are getting the technology understood, getting the technology as crafted amongst artists. Language is a pain point. If you're putting artists and technologists in a room together and they're talking different languages, which often we've experienced, you've got to build that trust around what it is, and don't use that technology as a solution for an audience problem. Don't put too much strain on that technology. That's also really important, that we use the tech to be transformative, give it time to work in the space, and make sure that the onboarding's right. Those are pain points.
Interesting. You hear often people say, because we have so many people coming in from so many different directions into the industry, everyone has kind of their own terminology for different areas of production and whatnot. It can be kind of a universal issue. Any comments, Etienne?
Mm-hmm. So one of our challenges actually is more about our production pipe, because as I said, we are originally a scientific startup, and we produce content for the scientific community. So we produce things that are really, really precise, with a resolution up to the millimeter. And when we developed a more cultural production, we had to invent new protocols, because museums sometimes they don't need to have a 3D model that is precise to the millimeter. And if you try to put something like that in a HoloLens helmet or VR helmet, the helmet will crash. So we had to find ways to propose our contents and have them match the devices. So we developed new protocols as we went. So that was one of the issues we had. And on Site Eternal Sites, which was 2 years ago, it was actually our first big exhibition, thanks to RMN Grand Palais. And so we really had to figure out, as we went, ways to create, these immersive films, while what we did so far wasn't that. So it was an issue, but actually from the same data from what we have in the field, you can create not only a scientific content, but also a cultural content. It just raises several issues, but you can overcome that. That's our issue.
Cool. Nice. Chloe?
I have no issues at all. Everything's so easy. No, what can I say? I think that the most challenging things is that we are coming from audiovisual, and so we are producing content more as an audiovisual producer for the moment. So we try to tell stories, and that's not always what museums want, to tell stories. They need mediation tools. They need a lot of things, but not always to tell stories. So one of our main challenge, I would say, is to show the museum directors, the museum a digital chief officer, and all these peoples, that to tell a story about an artwork or to tell a story in their museum would be an incredible experience for their visitors, and that can help their visitors or new visitors to come. Maybe some visitors that are not used to go to museums, or maybe that new visitors that are quite afraid to open the door of a museum. So that's what we can do, and that's what we did for the enemy, for example. That is really not a project for museums. But when we spoke with all the museums who host the experience, they understood and they saw that it's new kind of audience came because they were interested in VR, or because they were interested in war, or because they were interested in journalism, or because a lot of other subjects than museums, and they were very happy to come for maybe even the first time in that. And at the same time, for Monet, we had a lot of discussion with the museum, because they were thinking that this digital offer in the middle of the museum can attract too many people, and the question of the lines and all that, you can see it here in the festival, that it can be an issue. But they were worried that the people would come for the digital experience and not go to see the artwork. And that was the opposite. That means the people went to see the artwork, then to go to the VR experience, and then they went back to see the artwork, because the story we told in the VR gives them another way to see the artwork. So that was also a completely new experience, or visitor experience for the museum. So they were quite happy for that, of course. And we thought that it was a location where people discover VR, and that was not true either, because we had a survey at the end of the exhibition, and nearly half of the visitors had already tried VR before. So it was not so true, and so we have so many things to discover in this kind of experience in museum that I think we need to go on.
Every new stuff creates problems, new problems. So it's, let's say, obvious and normal that new technology, new instruments creates difficulties. We might even say that in our domain, which is fine art, it perhaps even more problem, because in French, a curator, c'est un conservateur. Et donc, quand tu mets un conservateur et un new stuff, so problems are, let's say, are all the way, but there are not problems, there are stakes and challenges. So it's part of the deal.
It's actually a good segue to my next question and thought is because these are such, old established institutions, often, it can be difficult, as you said, to introduce new technology, but also to form partnerships. And how would someone even approach a museum to work with you? Like, how does that even go about? How do you form these kind of relationships?
We've just established quite a big one. So the Royal Shakespeare Company is leading, the UK government have created a programme called Audience of the Future, and the Royal Shakespeare Company has put together a consortium that will explore the future of live performance through immersive technology. We have a consortium of about 15 partners, a mixture of creative, technology and research academic partners that over the next 2 years will each creative partner will create their own work. The partners are the Royal Shakespeare Company, Manchester International Festival, Marshmallow Laser Feast, Philharmonia Orchestra and Punch Drunk. each company is unique. They all do their own thing, but we also share audiences and we share ideas. And the thinking behind it is that we, instead of making just the work that the RSC would do, wouldn't it be brilliant if we learned from each other as creative partners about how we approach our work and how we make it and create a platform where we're sharing that. And the technology partners we're working with are relationships that we've had over time, actually, and the trust component's really important on these partnerships. So we're working with Magic Leap, Intel and Epic Games, and everyone offers a superpower that's different. No one's replicating what each other's doing, and I think on partnership that's really important. You need to know why you're there, what you're there to do and what you're there to learn off each other. But creative organisations are notoriously bad at documenting their work. They're just getting on and doing stuff. So the academic line of it and the research around it is that we are quite uniquely, and also we're not always comfortable with this as institutions or creative companies, having people in the room going, why are you doing that? What's that about? Why did you use that technology pipeline? What's, you know, why did you make that decision? You're like, I don't know, it's green, not blue. And they're going to be at the heart of this, and they're going to be documenting this and making sure that all of that learning comes out into the sector. There is nothing proprietorial right now in this space around us needing to make this work really good. In the challenge around cultural institution, is it justifying itself in a wider offer that we all have. We are a theatre company, we make theatre, so why are we bringing these technologies in? So if we've got to support artists, we've got to turbocharge the sector, but we've also got to work in partnership. We can't do this on our own. There isn't enough money to go around, but we have to make this work the best it can be, because I genuinely think that this work right now is foundational, and that we're in an age where we have a pre-internet workforce and a digitally native workforce, and they have to get on and work together. But as that comes over the next 10, 15 years, that will change. So if we lay the right foundations, a lot of this work will thrive later.
Nice.
Yeah, I think you know, the project that we're doing with Story Futures is on a much more smaller scale than the Audience of the Future one, because it's a smaller pot of money. But I think where for me we've sort of made ourselves look open for business with this, and it's a different approach, is that one, doing that kind of sprint pitch process in the gallery was really, really informative. And the fact that we had our director as part of the selection panel, and he was having to play with the technology, and it just all worked, and the fact that he was able to sit there and see what could be done in 2 days, and was amazed that these companies had come in. They'd done a bit of pre-work and we'd sent them stuff, so therefore they all came a little bit armed. But to turn something around in really less than 2 days, if you factor in all the sort of case study work we did, and then the kind of actual pitch process, you know, we had a live demonstration, but one of them was using a live chatbot that they just as part of the experience, and to have someone stand up and be confident enough to pitch that, and it worked, sort of blew the director's mind a little bit, which was brilliant. And I think the more we can do to open ourselves up to those kind of processes. The other bit of that project is that it's a co-funded project to produce it, but the winning agency actually retains the IP in terms of what they're producing, and so we've given them non-exclusive license for using the painting, but in terms of the shell of the structure of what they're doing, they're going to retain the IP on that. And I think doing that sort of thing, us being a house for that kind of development, but handing over to the sector is really important.
That's really interesting. Just because we don't have so much time left, I'm going to open up to questions. Does anyone in the audience have a question for these guys?
So my question is for Chloe. Can you just tell us a little bit more about the enemy? I'm sorry, I've never managed to see it. So I just want to know a little bit more about the enemy. It sounded a really fascinating project. So partly, if you could just tell us, you know, more details about it, but then also whether there was any sort of impact from the exhibition that when it travelled, and when you took it to Israel, for example, were you able to sort of monitor any kind of behaviour change or any sort of reconciliation at all?
So I can speak about the enemy for hours. So I will try to be very, very short on this. But of course we can maybe after the panel, if you want, no problem. I can tell you more. So for I think the idea, because I haven't said that, but The Enemy is a project by Karim Ben Khalifa, who is a war photographer. And he had the idea of this project when he was a resident at the Open Doc Lab at the MIT. And he discovered the first VR headset by Oculus. And he thought maybe that's a tool I can use instead of my camera, and instead of have printing pictures in newspapers that people just turn the pages and that don't change anything in the situation on site. So that was really his idea to have an impact. And I think his first idea to use VR was really to reach the next generation of fighters, the people who live in a war zone, but who are not with guns already. And so that's why we were so happy to be able to show it in Israel. But at the same time, we were not able to show it in Gaza or in Ramallah. So I can't say we reached this goal, of course, and we are still working on this. We are connecting some academic field in Congo and in Israel and in this zone, to be able to have more experience, maybe not with the VR, but we have also a mobile app in AR to use as a reconciliation tool. So it's a process, working process on this side, but of course we have a lot of data in each exhibition we had, because we are tracking all the walkthrough of the visitors because of the narrative. So we are also partnering with a university to see what we can do with this data, and if it's possible to tell maybe, and of course not that it's a reconciliation tool, but at least what kind of walkthrough people can have, and to connect it with user experience. Yeah.
Yeah, go for it.
Obviously, museums are multiple institutions, but I wonder if there's a clash between timelines and if you've experienced that. So I know museums often they work about 2 years in advance, and then obviously if you're working with new technologies, things are progressing so fast, there's the danger that a project planned 2 years in advance might become not so relevant by the time it comes out, and how you tackle that.
Yeah, it's true. It takes time, and museums are like projects in museum takes time, and 2 years it's an average. But technology advanced, but not that fast. So if you start a project in the two years time, you have the conception, etc. So you can make it evolve, the technology. So the technology you stop, I don't know, perhaps 8 months before. I'm saying it's not just you take a point at the beginning and then 2 years later you find it. So it's evolving. It's a challenge. Of course, it challenge not just technological but also economically speaking, because what you invest today you might not use tomorrow. And this is perhaps the problem is not a problem of time, it's a problem of money, which are related. And so it's a question. Yeah, don't have any answer for it. It's true that in several domains now, technology becomes more and more mature. So what we did, like, I don't know, on our cell phones like 5 or 4 years ago, today, it's a mature technology. Of course, like a generation, you add new features and you can do new stuff. But like the mobile app is a mature market. The device is mature. The users are mature. Also speaking about projection, so if you are projecting today in 4K, of course there will be 8K, but the 8K will be like, I don't know, in 6 years time. So it
have to start somewhere again. Yes. Yeah. Lawrence, you might be able to speak this as well because you had hardware changes in between, didn't you?
Well, I think, yeah, I mean, that's like the research to the Veronese project. Rebecca Gill, who's the curator on that, she's been doing it for 2 years, 2.5 years. But the reason why we've taken it to be it's a prototype approach is because we want to be rapid with it. So the company had been working on it once they got the pitch. It's been less than 3 months. And to get to that point where we're actually testing it in the gallery and to just show what the timelines are for doing that. We've literally, as of this week, got to that crunch moment of realizing that the tech we were originally going to use, it's right at its limit to make it the richness of experience that we want. But then the speed to port that into other areas is quite quick. So the problem then comes, one of the headsets you want to use isn't going to be available for another 6 months. And so you do get into that timeline. But I think if we can speed up and get the galleries and museums to understand how they can work quicker, it often comes down to internal processes, really, and those sign-off procedures. And I think the more we do, the more accepting of that we can be and sort of relaxing about the technology that's available.
Because I'm very aware of time. Can we take one more question? Is it allowed? Okay, one more question. Yeah, in the back.
How much do you finance? Do you finance the whole thing, or is it a co-production? How is it set up for the financing part of those projects? Thank you.
Who wants to take that? Who wants to talk money? Less fun than the project. So
Well, exactly. It is a lot of money, actually. This tech costs more than the theatre show, often. So that's a hard thing to justify internally. So we work in partnership. Often co-producing means we both put money in, we both put expertise, we both put hardware in. And I think one of the important things for the RSC over the last 8-9 years is actually the learning how to embedding it properly. So actually collaboration and partnership works really, really well because actually we're learning how to make new forms of theatre through this tech and through these experiences. And the tooling up of that has a massive value. So by getting companies to come closer to us, rather than us give a brief and then just send it out to be delivered, we get more value for money in that construct as well, because we retain the knowledge. So the next time we do it, it's quite possible it could be cheaper because we can do it in-house. And that's ultimately what we want, is to make sure that theatre makers, people that learn code or people that are working with this technology can work in theatre, and then it becomes more sustainable to us. But the money thing is a big challenge for us as well, and also the return, the commercialisation. Currently, the models around commercialisation are challenging in terms of an audience. An audience is very comfortable in our world paying for a ticket, and so we've got a generation of audiences 40 plus that are very comfortable paying for content, but we have an emergent audience that is less keen. And we have to somehow reconcile that. So the money challenges aren't just at the moment of commission. The money challenges are all the way through, and how much the devices cost, for people to have them in their normal lives as well.
Etienne, I'm curious how you fly around the world to get to do all these amazing scans.
So we have two types of clients. We have scientific organizations like UNESCO who commission scan works. And we have cultural institutions who commission cultural content. And often we already did the scans through scientific missions, or sometimes even on our own funds. We went to Palmyra on our own funds. We went to Aleppo as well. And so we have data that were already paid for by us. And what we wanted to do is to share and disseminate this knowledge with the audience. So on the one hand, it made the cost of production cheaper for our clients. And on the other hand, it allowed us to be more effective to share this knowledge.
Do you have time for one more? Yeah? Okay, one more. Anybody else? No? You guys have like the craziest panel of experts up here. Are you serious in this industry? Okay, well, we'll wrap it up with that then. Thank you so much for joining us today here, guys. And yeah, enjoy the next panel.